A lot of talking happening, which is great. Love networking. All right, so we're going to have an industry expert panel. We're going to have how EY Studio partnered with Mitacs, a national innovation and research nonprofit. They're going to come up here and educate us on some very interesting conversations. So I have Marianne Velou, I hope I pronounced it right, and I have Catherine Martineau, and I have the moderator, Sean Jameson. All right, if we can welcome them all up to the stage.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Ooh, that's a little bit loud. I'll speak a little bit quieter. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for attending our panel discussion. The goal of today's discussion is truly to be a conversation. So I've prepared some questions, and we'll have a bit of back and forth between the three of us. The story that we want to tell is around an organization called Mitacs. We'll tell you a little bit more about what Mitacs is as an organization. And they're going through a major modernization, a transformation. Essentially, they are looking to modernize their service offering to their customers, largely through a practice called service design to enhance their overall customer experience. If you don't understand what service design is, or the concepts or methodologies, that's okay, because we're going to share a little bit of perspective into what service design is and into how it's helping in this transformation. I'm going to reintroduce our two guests, and then I'm going to jump into a couple of questions. So Catherine Martineau is Director of Service Design and Customer Experience at Mitacs. For any that don't know, Mitacs is a national nonprofit organization that connects businesses with academia through research projects and internships. Why I'm excited about talking to Mitacs and working with them is, as an entrepreneur myself, Mitacs was an organization that I relied on for non-dilutive funding early in my career, and now I've come full circle to actually collaborating with them on this transformation project, which is very exciting. With me as well is Marianne Velou. Marianne is a lead service designer within a practice called EY Studio Plus. Studio Plus is a boutique consultancy within EY that focuses on enhancing customer experiences. We help organizations enhance existing products and services for clients, and we help them build new products and services for clients. The goal of this discussion today is to spend about 20 or 25 minutes to provide a little bit of a window into a transformation that is actually underway. Catherine attended this trade show a couple of years ago. We're now midway through a transformation, so it's a great time to kind of tell the story of where we're at and a little bit of perspective in terms of where we're headed. In terms of questions, I've prepared some questions for the room. We'll see how many of the questions that we get through in the time that we have today. And if there's any questions from the room, we'll also take time to answer those as well. Before I jump into the first question, in terms of my background, I've worked in the tech industry for over 2 decades. I've had the very good fortune of being part of 3 growth to exit stories, so growth to scale up to exit in the technology ecosystem within Canada. I was with a company that grew in scale and exited to Amazon a number of years ago. I was with a company that grew in scale and exited to private equity, and then most recently with an organization that grew in scale and exited to EY. So let's jump in. First question, Catherine, for you is sort of what first triggered the shift towards this modernization at Mitacs? What was the trigger? Why now? Tell us a few details.
Yeah, Sean, thanks. So you mentioned a little bit about the 2-year ago timeline. So 2 years ago, I actually attended DCX. So I'm a loyal attendee. And when I attended DCX, we at Mitacs had just started having conversations about kicking off somewhat of an enterprise transformation. And that enterprise transformation was focused primarily on a variety of digital implementations and then hoping to see somewhat of a client-centric transformation as well. So Mitacs, who is, as Sean also mentioned, quite committed to innovation, we support organizations throughout their own innovation continuum. And in order to support those organizations, we realized that we needed to kind of look within, and that transformation needed to be in part an innovation that came from within. So when I bumped into Sam here at DCX, he had just presented about how Studio Plus had supported other governmental agencies into digital implementations and some types of transformations, so it was a very timely introduction.
Awesome. Maybe you can sort of set some context for the room and tell us even a little bit more about Mitacs as an organization. This is kind of a meta topic, right?
Yep.
An organization that helps stimulate innovation in Canada is themselves going through an innovation journey. So maybe a little bit more about what Mitacs is as an organization, just to set the context for the room.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mitacs is a granting agency. We're a granting institution that support organizations across Canada and even internationally to a certain extent. We connect academia and industry, and we ensure that there is, or they reach somewhat of a return on investment when it comes to their research and development. So a lot of what we do is matching experts together, so matching organizations with key experts, key researchers. We even have some in-house advisors, and we allow them to access grants to accelerate their research, accelerate their commercialization projects. So with that in mind, we as an organization need to, when we talk about innovation, to properly support those organizations, we need to ensure we have the right tools in place for the matching process. We need to be able to turn granting applications around quickly. We need to be providing scalable aftermarket support. And ultimately, go back a few years, we realized that our current experience wasn't doing that necessarily. We weren't in a scalable position, and so we were getting comments from external stakeholders telling us, I want to be turning things around quickly, I want to be getting the right matching, the right connections in place, and so we found a ton of opportunities for us as a combination for us to transform, and so we put a successful transformation as part of our key strategic goals for the upcoming years, and that's what kicked everything off.
Awesome, thanks for that context. Marianne, as you know, organizations always feel like the challenges that they're facing or the opportunities that they're pursuing are entirely unique to them. And while there's some truth to that, there's also some commonality in terms of what other organizations are facing. So perhaps you can share some perspective on sort of rising or evolving customer expectations. How do you see that sort of impacting organizations everywhere today?
Yes. Rising customer expectations have a lot of implications for organizations, but I'd say even more so for public organizations. Right? If we look at the private sector, they've long been competing on customer experience, promising convenience, speed, personalization, transparency, you name it, always more and more. But historically, if we look at public organizations, they've been more focused on compliance, privacy, process stabilization. So we're now at a crossroad where there's this pressure on the public sector to actually modernize and deliver services that feel just as seamless. Because at the end,
the initial sort of problem set, or the problem that you were ultimately trying to solve at Mitacs, share a little bit of detail would be great.
Yeah, so we, in a traditional citizen serving operating model, in an easy way, it's a reflex to think or question ourselves when it comes to who are we serving? Are we serving a consumer? Marianne talks a lot about consumer expectations. We are familiar with it because we are all consumers. And we came to kind of that realization at a point in time, and most of it was coming from a variety of comments we were getting. We stay very close, obviously, to organizations. We stay very close to post-secondary institutions. We even stay close to the interns that are coming from these post-secondary institutions. And some of the comments were like, how is Mitacs modernizing itself? So that question came about as to, are we serving consumers? Should we be following those types of consumer expectation trends and make sure that we are modernizing ourselves? And the answer was yes. So we had to do a huge shift in mindset, as you can imagine. We had and still have employees that have been with us for decades. And so creating a lot of change management around that shift in mindset was a big focus and a challenge in itself. I'm sure all of you today still are going through somewhat of some change management as you're introducing new technologies, I'm sure. So that was one of the big challenges. The other one was that we were looking at experience in a very siloed way. So we were looking at it maybe just from a service delivery standpoint. We were maybe looking at too much upstream, too much downstream. So we ended up realizing that we couldn't solve our problems, no matter what they were, by looking at it as just a quick fix. We needed to be hovering about 30,000 feet instead of being too close to the ground and then kind of, like a horse on a racetrack. So that was our second challenge. Our third challenge was that we're today and still are in a multi-stakeholder environment. So we have various personas. So imagine trying to build an experience for personas that are looking for desired outcomes that are quite different from each other. How do we build an experience that is either holistic or similar or not similar? And how do we make sure that we're not building too much of a solution provider type model that could, at the end of the day, not be beneficial for our organization? And then the final one that kind of sums it all up is that we were in a position going, how do we transform? Where do we start? So that's pretty much what kicked it all off, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for that. Marianne, maybe you can share how service design played a role in addressing these challenges, right? These are not trivial challenges. They're not entirely unique, but they're unique to Mitacs in terms of sort of how to solve them effectively. How did service design play a role in addressing the challenges that Catherine shared?
Yeah, essentially service design is about holistic problem analysis, and Catherine kind of mentioned wanting that 10,000 feet view, and that's essentially the role of service design, right? Is to think end-to-end, front-to-back, kind of everything at a glance view, what's working, what's not working. So both in terms of how you deliver your experience, but also how you orchestrate it all internally to deliver that. So essentially what we did to actually start the conversation is we've shifted the conversation away from processes, responsibilities, RACI, governance, internal challenges, and really started with, okay, who are the users? Who are the buyers? What do everyone want out of Mitacs, and what is Mitacs willing to deliver, and what customer promise makes sense for us as an organization, right? So that's what we did. We started with identifying the key users and consumers, their expectations, and then defining what Mitacs wanted to deliver as a value proposition. And then we mapped what an ideal experience would like, but only starting from a user standpoint. So we're not talking about teams, we're not talking about who owns what, we're just thinking holistic, what do we want this to be like? And we've used that through the Service Blueprint, which is a decision-making tool that we often use with a lot of our clients. And essentially, the Service Blueprint is a way to visualize your experience ecosystem according to the logic of front stage and backstage. So front stage is everything that is visible to all of us whenever we think of Mitacs. It's Mitacs at a conference, Mitacs on social media. Whenever I apply for a Mitacs grant, I email them. Whenever there's an interaction between myself and Mitacs, this is what I see, and that's front stage. And backstage is everything that is now invisible to me, but still needs to happen in order for the interaction to be successful. So we're talking about policies, process, technology, tools, people, capabilities, name it. And we've kind of taken that service blueprint. So going back to Mitacs, we mapped out what is the target experience looks like for professors, for industry partners, for interns. And then we actually trickled down and almost kind of reverse engineered and be like, okay, if that's what we want, what are the requirements that are needed for technology? What are the requirements for our people? What are the requirements for our policies to change in order for that target state to happen and to be successful? So that was, I think, a very eye-opening experience where kind of everything kind of meshed well together at the end of the day, and we were able to actually use, I keep saying we, but Mitacs was actually able to identify based on the blueprint what are the key priorities, the key milestones that we actually needed to achieve, and kind of really guided that strategic roadmap and became this directional North Star that everybody could suddenly rally around and support.
Awesome, thank you. I like the we as well. I think we're actually
Right?
one team, right? This has been a couple of years, and it will likely be a couple years more. And so it definitely feels like one team because we are one team. Part of this transformation was to sort of introduce service design as a concept to Mitacs. You also run service design as a practice now within Mitacs. We talked a bit about what got you here in terms of the event a couple of years ago, a little bit about the problem that you were looking to solve. And so maybe you could bring us to the present, right? Where is Mitacs at today in terms of its own service design journey?
I'll actually go back a little bit in time, if you don't mind, Sean, because what got us here is that North Star that Marianne talks about. So we sat in a room for about 3 days, and we is the right word because EY's been part of the family for the last 2 years. And we sat down in a room for about 3 days in a design thinking style workshop, business leads, subject matter experts, leaders combined, and we built that ideal state blueprint, service blueprint that we were looking to eventually achieve. We knew that it was going to take a while, but that North Star was really helping us, one, I would almost say kind of answer a lot of the questions we had around, should we be building one type of experience? Should we be meeting one set of expectations? And we answered a variety of questions by building that North Star, and it became an inspirational tool for our staff. It gave us something we could all work towards, but it didn't only do that. That blueprint that we built helped us create a lot of buy-in with our leaders. It helped us give something black on white, has more colors than black on white, but you understand my saying, into showing where we needed to focus our time and our investments. And we talked a little bit about innovation. Bringing service design as a methodology within the firm was, to us, quite innovative. We have a lot of staff that's gone through some kind of service design training to ensure that we are putting the practice in play. And so once that blueprint was done and we created a ton of buy-in and everybody was rallying behind that blueprint, we built a team, as Sean mentioned. So we do have an in-house service design team. We work with subject matter experts across various departments, and that team really helps revisit processes that create, once revisited, a win-win scenario for the organization, but also for our external stakeholders. So in order to do that then, so we had that team still up and running, and a growing team actually today. We also built a service and support team. We actually have team members of that team here today. That team is very much focused on ensuring that we are there for that aftermarket support I mentioned at the beginning of this panel. And that team was a creation out of this transformation. We also defined new ways of working, so a brand new framework, bringing in our product team, bringing in our operational excellence team, and then a ton of subject matter experts across different departments again. And these ways of working get us from an idea or an area of improvement all the way to either a delivered new practice or standard from an SLA standpoint, or even from a new digital product standpoint. So speaking of digital products, a big piece of what we've built is a client portal, which we call Mitacs Plus. This portal is allowing applicants to apply for grants, and the ideal state of this application portal or client portal today is to build an online community for interns, for post-secondary institutions and their various members, and again, for partner organizations, so a variety of companies that are benefiting from Mitacs today. So those are some of the things that have been in the works. It's rejigged our mindset, of course, looking at all these things and building all of these things, and we're quite proud of it.
Awesome. I love hearing the perspective of it's not just about the transformation itself, the technology, the project, what we're delivering today. It's about you and your team, giving the team the tools and skills that you need in order to be able to take this and carry it forward, right? Fantastic. Maybe, Marianne, maybe you could give us a little bit of perspective on sort of service design as a practice in the industry. Where do you see service design heading?
I definitely feel like it won't be a surprise to everyone when I say data and AI is definitely top of mind. What I mean by that is how can we embed data more continuously in our service design practice, and AI as well. There's definitely a lot of tools out there and solutions that are starting to emerge in journey analytics, journey management, kind of those different kind of bubbles of innovation. And I think the movement behind that is to take a more proactive and predictive approach in the way that we do service design. So usually the teams in the market are usually, there's a problem, we bring in the service design team and we solve it, and then we move forward. Now, I think we're going to move more into this continuous practice of, now we have multiple journeys. How do we monitor them? How do we continuously improve them and scale them? So it's really service design now being less of a reactive and more proactive in driving impactful change. And by also embedding data, we're now better equipped to link the design effort to actual business impact and business outcomes, which is helpful, I guess, to everyone to understand the value of service design.
Awesome. It's great to get kind of industry perspective, where things are headed. They're only as valuable as what the customer thinks. So perhaps, Catherine, you can share a little bit of perspective. How does that resonate with you?
For sure, data's been a big part of our conversation today. How do we integrate data into a blueprint? I would say no practice is perfect, right? And one thing that we realize as we use the blueprint more and more is that we were missing these kind of swim lanes that were reflecting voice of customer data, it being satisfaction, lead time, or even internal value stream style key performance metrics, such as cost, simply put. So one thing that we're working a lot towards, and why I kind of understand why it's maybe the future of service design, is how do we embed that data? We have big feedback loops and that voice of customer program, but how do we embed that into the blueprint so that data is feeding that decision making, is feeding also the traffic light style performance for every journey within that customer lifecycle? So that's a big piece of what we see in our future. Another one is we had and still have today lean practices. So value stream mapping is a practice we still do today. We have a team that focuses on that, in fact, with some of our business leads. And we wanted to bring the blueprint, which was much more front-facing focused, with a much more internal efficiency style tool. So value stream mapping and blueprint are right now, so we're working towards bringing them together, and how do we do that? So I think it's not about one being better than the other or having to choose either. I think there's a way of bringing it together, and that's what we're talking through. And the final one, which is a huge piece, I would say, for us, Mitacs, is, and myself coming actually from the private sector before joining Mitacs, is we often focus very much on service delivery, right? Service delivery is where we think we can drive the most impact, but there is so much value in everything that's upstream of the customer lifecycle, so awareness, engagement, onboarding, and a lot of value at the downstream part of that journey, which, retention, renewal, how do we drive those feedback loops, and how do we bring people back to the beginning of that customer lifecycle? So a lot of the blueprint, what that really helped us do was identify areas of improvements outside service delivery. And it gave us that bird's eye view of saying, actually, engagement and onboarding has a huge impact as to how we deliver the service and what is expected. It actually sets expectations as to how we're going to deliver the service and how they're going to feel from a customer standpoint, how they're going to feel once we've delivered that service. So I would say those are kind of the three, for us, the future when it comes to service design is identifying opportunities to integrate data. Second is identifying areas of opportunities above, so upstream and downstream of service delivery. And then, of course, bringing in lean practices, combining strengths and complementing each other versus choosing one or the other.
Awesome, thanks for that. I also come from industry. I've worked in e-commerce, I've worked in B2B SaaS, I've worked in digital services, building custom software, building working apps for customers. And service design is also a practice that really resonated with me personally. When I joined EY Studio Plus as a practice, it felt like a skill set and an approach and a methodology that you could really practically apply to help enhance a customer experience, right? That could be a customer experience for an existing product or service that you want to enhance. You really want to improve or enhance that customer experience. And it also applies to scenarios where there's an interest in building new products and services, right? You want to go out to a new market, to a new customer segment. How do you kind of get started? And what I love about service design, and specifically the blueprint that you both just sort of referred to a couple of times in the last few minutes, is a blueprint gives you a map, right? And once you have that map, You now know where to go, and you know how to get there. And in the absence of that, there are so many decisions that need to be made that are very, very difficult. And so having that map kind of shines a light on where you are, where you want to go as an organization, and I think sets you up ultimately for success. Maybe with the last couple of minutes that we have, a couple of sort of final questions, hopefully that pertain even more so to the room. So Catherine, we know that you were at this conference a couple of years ago, sitting in the audience, contemplating a transformation for Mitacs for the first time.
Yeah.
Now you're midway into a transformation, and obviously there's still much work to be done.
Yeah.
What advice or suggestions do you have for anyone in the room who's at the very beginning, right? They're thinking about something, they know there's a problem, they don't really know how to get started. Any advice that you would have for the room?
Storytelling is powerful. No, I just came up with this honestly because I think that there are so many things I could give as advice, but it doesn't always work for everybody. But ultimately, storytelling is one thing that I believe we're all good at. We tell stories about ourselves, about our past. Storytelling is what I think drove the most buy-in. Service design as a practice, using the blueprint was great. It was a nice complement to the storytelling, but what drove the organization towards that transformation is that we told the story of our clients and helped with the mindset too, right? We needed to shift the mindset. So I would say storytell, connect it to if you have a strategic plan, if you have corporate goals, annual. I would say take your story, the story that comes directly from your clients, and bring it to your leaders. I think that's what's going to drive, I believe, quite a lot of inspiration. And it's very hard to debate what they're doing and what they're wanting when you're meant to be there to support them and reach their desired outcomes. So storytelling, being brave, transformation's not easy, but when you partner yourself with the right people and you surround yourself with the right teams, you use the right artifacts and you tell the story, I think that's super powerful.
Awesome, thank you for that. And you'll be around a little bit today in case anybody has any follow-up questions for
Absolutely.
how you can give them
Yep.
maybe more practical advice for their specific transformation journey.
Yep.
Awesome. Marianne, maybe from a service design perspective, there may be people in the room who are very familiar with service design, people who are less so. What is your advice and recommendation for anyone in the room that knows they want to modernize a customer experience, know they want to focus on CX, but doesn't yet understand either what service design is or kind of how to get started or how to engage with a third party in order to do that?
I think there's a few triggers or flags to look for whenever it might tell you the need for service design. I think one, disconnected experience. If you feel like it's just silos and it's disconnected, that might be the need to actually bring in service design